Hi everyone, it's Matt again, Community Programs Manager at Max Ottawa. I'm here today to give you all an update as to how our programs are currently being impacted by COVID-19, and then also here to talk to you all about plant care at home. So please stay tuned because I wish you could see the other angle that I had earlier for my camera because I'm literally surrounded by houseplants right now, and I'll be talking to you all a little bit about, what I do to take care of them. This is all information that I've learned through either learning from other folks or by reading or doing some research. So I'll be really excited to share that with you. And if you have any questions in regards to plant care or houseplant care or tree care at home, please put your questions into the place where you can type up those questions so that I can see them and potentially have this fun engagement session with you all. So without further ado, if you didn't know, our offices at Max Ottawa are closed. They will be closed until further notice. We are encouraging people to please email us if you had meetings scheduled with us or anything of that sort. And we'll be responding to your emails as soon as possible and letting you know if the meeting is canceled or if we are moving it to an online platform. Other than that, stay connected with the community. We're going to be trying to be doing a lot of these online engagement sessions with you all over the next coming weeks as this pandemic continues. So if you didn't know, on Thursday nights, Joel hosts a mental health skill sharing group. You need to register to participate. You email joel@maxottawa.ca to register. And then the community programs team has been hosting some of these online sessions every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. I'm a little bit early today simply because I have a meeting at 2 p.m. that I have to attend, but regardless, I'm really happy that I see some people are logging in and joining. So if you weren't there at the beginning of the video, I'm going to be talking to you all about houseplant care today. It's honestly something that I am super passionate about. I was telling my roommate and my partner, I'm like, I think this might be the most fun I've ever had at work. I'm not sure if that's a problem or not. But I will be talking to you all about the routine that I do, some of the stuff that I do to, try to help my plants grow. And then also we'll be answering any of the questions that you have. So please, if you have any questions, type them up into the box so that I can respond. So the first thing I want to talk to you all about today is watering. I think watering is the biggest source of problem for most folks who have houseplants. You might not realize this, but overwatering or underwatering is usually the most common problem people have when they're trying to take care of their plants. So I have this beautiful Begonia Immaculata here in front of me, and honestly one of my prized possession plants. I love her so much. And so the first thing that you can do when you're watering your plants to make sure that, number one, they've dried out far enough, is you can take a finger and stick it in approximately 1 inch into your pot. And if you feel like the soil is dry, then that probably means that it could use a good watering. Another technique that I've seen people use in the past is actually using a chopstick or a little wooden stick like this one. This is just a chopstick that I got at a restaurant, and you can stick it in. So if you don't want to put your finger and get your nails all dirty like I just did, you can put in the stick and try to put it in as deep as you can, and then take it out. And if the dirt is sticking to the stick, then that means that the plant probably doesn't need a watering. But if it is dry and there isn't really anything sticking to the stick, then you know that your plant could probably use a good watering. Another technique that some folks use is having a moisture meter. So I remember when I first started taking care of my plants, I would use this all the time. It was honestly my go-to tool because I was so afraid to miss a watering, or I was so afraid of overwatering. I was watching a lot of YouTubers take care of their plants online, and a lot of them were saying that, over or under watering was the number one issue. So I would use this baby all the time. Now I've gotten to know my plants. So to be honest with you all, I don't use this as much. I actually had to go and fetch it out of a storage unit to show you all, but Now I just use my fingers, and I also usually watch my plants. You can usually tell once you get to know your plants really well when they do need the watering, because the leaves tend to like drop down a little bit. And then when they're freshly watered, the leaves will perk up towards the light. And that's usually a sign that you know you're doing a good job. So if you want to use the moisture meter, all you have to do is put it in to the soil, approximately again 1 to 2 inches all the way in. And then as you can tell, this one, it goes from, I actually don't know what it goes from. It goes from dry, moist to wet. And it's currently dry, so we're gonna water this plant here today to show you all how I think is the best way to plant. So those 3 techniques to water your plants, those are my go-tos. And then when it comes to watering, I usually get a lot of friends asking me like, how much do I water my plants? So what you want to make sure is, well, number one, I also know a lot of people that have plants that are in pots that don't have any drainage holes. So like this pot, for example, from IKEA is great. It's a ceramic pot, but it doesn't have any drainage holes at the bottom. And what happens is if you put dirt in here and then put your plant in there and then don't allow for any drainage, it'll be hard to tell when you fully watered through your plant. But if you have a pot like this one, for example, which has drainage holes under, what you'll want to do is you'll want to put water in until it fully soaks the plant and the water drips through the bottom. Now, what a lot of people will do is, for example, I have this pot here, so I'm just going to go ahead and water this plant. I'm going to try not to make a mess on my bed. So there you go. So I've watered the plant. I'm going to put this down. And as you can tell, it's already leaking through the bottom. So I know that this is a good soak. And I know that my plant has probably received enough water. Now, what you don't want to do is what you probably will do if you have many plants like I do, is you will let your plant drip through in either a saucer or in the sink or in the bathtub. But what you want to avoid doing is you want to avoid the plant sitting in water that's already been dripped, because the plant will actually eventually re-soak up that water through the dirt and through its roots. And what it could lead to is root rot and overconsumption of the water for the plant. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring your plants when you're watering them. So you want to make sure that it's leaked all the way through, and then when it's no longer leaking, you can check it every now and then you can take it out and then put it back into your, what I would call a cache pot. A cache pot is like, a lot of people will tell me like, but Matt, I don't want to keep my plants in this planter. It's really ugly. It doesn't go with any of my decor. And you know what? That's totally fair. So what I normally do is I will leave it in that nursery pot or a plastic pot, and then I will put it inside a cache pot, which is more decorative. And what's fun is that as your plants keep growing, you only need to take the cache pot out, and then you can use this for another plant that you might have in your home. So like, I could use it for this one, or I could use it for this one. So you can really kind of like swap it out and then change your plants out as they keep growing out the cache pots that you have. So that being said, this plant is fully watered, so I'm going to move it to its cache pot, and then I will leave it. And usually you want to water your plants about, I would say, once a week. In the winter, your plants don't need as much water simply because there's not as much sun. So usually, I will still water them about once a week, but most plant experts would say that your plants can probably go down to like one watering every week and a half. I personally prefer to do it once a week because I'll show you later, I have a huge Ficus lyrata tree, and if I go to one and a half, when she grows new leaves, she grows leaves with dots on them, which means that I'm giving her inconsistent watering, which means she's a little unhappy. So that's why I try to keep things consistent throughout the year. But if I notice that the dirt is really, really dry at a week, I just will not do that week and wait till the next week. And just keep monitoring the plant. Now, if you want your plants to grow really nice and bushy and symmetrical, what you'll want to do, this is an example. This is a spider plant that actually one of my coworkers gave me, Joel. And when he gave it to me, it was like really, really, really small. And I've had it for about a year now, and it's growing really, really well. And so what you want to do after you've watered your plant, if you want them to grow very, like if you want them to be symmetrical, is you'll want to do a quarter turn every week after you water your plant. So you want to give it a quarter turn just so that it gets the same sun exposure on all sides of the plants. And what that will do is it'll, like, honestly, like this one, grow like a really, really nice bushy and symmetrical plant. So that's another really great tip as you're watering. When you're done letting the water come out, you can take your plant and then put it back into its cachepot, but turn it a quarter, turn the pot like about a quarter towards the sun, and then it'll help make sure that the plant grows symmetrical. So that's another really good tip. I don't see any questions so far. Just a reminder, if you have any questions for me, please put them down below, and I would be happy to chat with you all about what I know about plant care. So the next thing, often people will tell me the next thing after watering is, how often do I spritz my plants? Or like, how often should I like mist them? And the reality is that most plants actually do not need to be mist. Misting is just something that's really fun for us to do because it makes us feel like we're taking care of our plants. So it's definitely not a bad thing to do. I don't want you to think that it's a bad thing to do. It's just not necessarily necessary. But I've actually found a very useful time to use my mister or my spray bottle is actually when I'm trying to clean my plants. So plants, for example, like, actually, let me grab this Ficus altissima here. So plants like this Ficus altissima here, oh, this is such a beautiful variegated plant. Can you all see the variegation in this? Oh, so beautiful. I've had this one for, I think, maybe just before the winter started, and it was such a like joy purchase. Like, oh my god, you guys have no idea how much these plants make me happy. Anyways, so when you have plants that have huge leaves like this one, what you want to make sure is that you actually dust these leaves off, because light gets absorbed through the leaves. It does photosynthesis, which produces energy for the plant to keep growing and living, right? So the more dust there is on the leaf, the less photosynthesis it can do. So you really want to make sure that you're wiping the leaves off. So what I found is actually really helpful is I use my mister, I'll have my plant, and then I usually have a microfiber cloth. Ooh, I thought I had everything near me, but I think maybe I just forgot my microfiber cloth. Anyway, so I'll spritz my plants, and then the water will go over the leaves. It'll look really pretty, and then I'll take my microfiber cloth and just wipe the leaves off. Now, one thing that I've been told by plant YouTubers that is a really good technique is actually to take 2 fingers, hold it at the stem like this, and then pull the leaf out as you're like wiping it off to try and not damage the stem or the leaf. So just another little tip for you all. So I'm gonna put this Ficus altissima back. Another thing to remember about misting, if you end up doing misting just for fun because you feel like doing that, and that's something that's, you know, that you like doing, that's totally okay. But just try to mist earlier in the day. So you want to avoid misting late in the afternoon or when the sun is going down. And again, it's because the plant will want to absorb that water, right, to try and soak in all the nutriments. But if you soak it later in the day, what it could lead to is actually moisture on the plant, extra moisture that isn't needed, and then it'll potentially cause some rot, or it'll just over moisturize your plant in a way that isn't needed. So try to think about that when you're misting. Now, some people also mist with like oils. Be very careful if you're using oil like neem oil to clean your plants, or if you're using oil to mist your plants to make it really, really shiny. Make sure that you don't do that when the sun is shining bright, because we all know oil on the face out in the sun, not good, because our face will burn. Well, same thing with the plants, and same thing with their leaves. You want to avoid putting oil on there when the sun is shining bright, so that the plants don't burn. All right, what can we talk about next? Ooh, anyone has any questions for me, please enter it down below. I will say that one more time because I don't see any questions yet. I just see people watching, which is great. Thank you all for watching. So the next thing I'm going to talk to you all about actually is fertilization. So fertilization, again, not something that is absolutely necessary, but something that I found has really helped some of my plants just like thrive and go wild. Like I go to the plant shop to talk about, oh, I see someone's not happy. Okay. I see hearts now, so hopefully that person that was angry is loving me now. But fertilization, yeah, like I said, is something that's really helped me grow my plants really, really big. So I personally use fish fertilizer. Now, some folks have moved to something that is more eco-friendly. So I honestly, like a thing like this will last you like a full year. So definitely look for the eco-friendly options. There are some out there. There's all sorts of types of fertilizer, but this one has worked really well for me. I bought this one. It was $18 at the plant store, and like I said, it lasts forever. And what you want to do is actually, so here I have my like other watering tin that I normally use. So in this big tin, and like my face for size, I will honestly put just a cap full. So like a small cap. Oh my god, this stuff smells so bad. So anyway, so if you want to use fish fertilizer, you can do that. Now, certain plants also have their own fertilizers because they will need specific nutrients. So my Ficus lyrata, so my fiddle fig leaf, so like a plant that is really popular and that a lot of people know about, actually needs needs other nutrients. So I actually purchased this one for that one, and that works really well. And then, like I said, for all the other ones, I just use fish fertilizer. But honestly, do some research, look up what your plants like in terms of fertilizer, and then go to your local plant store, and they'll more than likely have something available for you. When I was buying this one actually at the plant shop, someone even told me that they sell plant fertilizer at Dollarama, and that it works really well. So it was actually the staff at the plant store, and they probably only told me this because I'm a loyal customer and go there way too often. But honestly, yeah, so fertilizer, find it online, Dollarama, apparently your plant store, and you'll be able to do that. So it stinks, but it does the job. I love fish fertilizer. Yeah, it really does. Like, honestly, some of my plants have grown really well because of it. So I completely agree. So I'm just going to go back to pots quickly. So just a reminder, you want to make sure that you have pots that have drip holes. So holes at the bottom. So for example, this is a nursery pot. So like a normal plastic pot that has those drainage holes at the bottom. This, for example, is a ceramic pot that does not have a drainage hole. What you could do is, if you wanted this to be the main pot in which you planted your plant, you could actually just drill a hole at the bottom, and then that would provide the drainage hole that's necessary for your plant to be able to drain properly. What I've seen other people do, but I find this technique maybe not as efficient or as certain, is they will put a bed of rocks at the bottom of their pot without drainage holes, and then they'll plant the plant over it, and then what that does is when they water the plants, the water will sit where the rocks are and not sit where the roots are, so the roots won't become rotten, or they won't absorb too much water. Now, I find this technique, again, I've been doing this for now like a few years, and I find this technique a little bit harder for me because it's harder to gauge when you've given your plant enough water. And with the drainage holes, it's just so easy because you know that when it starts draining that your plants have received enough water. So again, ceramic pots are good, but if they have drainage holes, these are like typical nursery pots in plastic. Those usually have drainage holes. And then you also have like potters, like terracotta pots. And this one, for example, is from IKEA. It has a drainage hole at the bottom. Now, some advantages and disadvantages of both of these. If you don't want to take care of your plants too much, definitely go with something less porous, like a plastic pot, because what it does, it'll actually contain the moisture inside, and your plant will be happier for longer because it won't need as much attention or as much water. Now, if you use porous pots like ceramic or terracotta, for example, what you'll want to do is you'll just want to make sure, especially throughout the summer seasons, that you're checking in regularly on your plants to make sure that they're not drying out, because the porous pots will actually absorb some of the moisture out of the ground, which can be good for some plants that prefer to be drier. And to be honest with you, most plants usually do prefer to be on a drier side. But if your plants actually prefer moisture and prefer to stay wet longer, then you could use pots like this one, like a plastic pot from the nursery, for example. Those work really, really well. So that's for pots. And now, and talk to you all a little bit about, so some of the plants actually prefer to be dry, for example, this Sansevieria. Where do you get your plants? Any tips on lighting? Yes, great questions. I'll get to that in just a few seconds. So, and I'm sorry if I get any of these plant names wrong. I think I know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the right genus. This one, for example, I think like my mom calls this a snake, mother's tongue, or like snake plant. I think those are like the common terms. This one actually prefers to be a lot drier, so you don't need to you don't need to water this one, for example, as often. And really, like I said earlier, you really want to do your research when you're getting plants and try to understand what kind of fertilizer it likes, what kind of light it likes, how it likes to be watered, and that will usually give you like better outcomes with your plants. And usually what I'll tell people too is like, people will buy plants and then will bring them home and then be like, ooh, I want my plant in that corner. Well, unfortunately, it's like, I wish it worked that way, but sometimes it just doesn't. You really want to try to identify where you want your plants before you go shopping. And then what that does is it allows you to be able to go to the plant shop and say to the person that's working at the shop, I have west-facing windows and it's going to be in a corner that's far away from the windows or the doors or where there's light. So I need a plant that can withstand those types of conditions. And then I'll be able to match you with something that's more appropriate for you. This, for example, great plant for almost anyone. It almost doesn't require anything. I actually had like a massive one of these and I gave it away for Christmas, but I cut one of the stems off. So this is a propagation. I just cut it off the main plant and then potted it, and then I just got a new leaf like a few months ago. Anyways, this is really exciting. This was like, I think 4 or 5 months of work. Anyways, but I'm really excited because I had a really big one before and I really loved it. And so I'm happy to have another one again that's going to start growing. And then I have, surprisingly, I'm also not always amazing with my plants, but I try to be. You have other plants like this one, for example, that is a Stromanthe Triostar. And as you can see, the leaves are all curled up right now because it's not happy. It's just not having a good time. And I don't know what I did to it. Honestly, I think I'm a good plant dad, but clearly I'm doing something wrong with this one. And this one actually prefers to be really, really moist. So I have this one right beside my humidifier. I water it sometimes twice a week, and it's still not enough. Like, I've had dried leaves on this one. Like, it's just, and now the leaves are all curled up, and I probably think that it must be because there's like bugs inside or something. I honestly need to replant it probably and repot it. But yeah, you'll probably make mistakes, and that's okay. That's part of like learning how to live with your plants and learning how to take care of them, and that's totally okay. I know this one is gonna survive because I'm usually really good at reviving my plants. And I wish you could see the insides of the leaves because it's just a beautiful one. I fell in love when I saw it at the store, but again, I fell in love with it without having a place to put it, then brought it home and realized I maybe didn't have optimal conditions to maintain this one. So anyways, it is what it is, but make sure that you do your research ahead of time. Make sure you know where you want to put your plants in your house and try to plan a little bit ahead of time. Know where your light is coming from, what kind of light exposure you have. Bring all that information to the plant store, and they'll be able to really match you with something that will increase your chance for success with your plants. So I'm going to go back to David's question. So where do I get my plants? I get my plants at, like, to be honest with you, whenever I visit a new city, like if I go to Montreal for the weekend, I'll go to all the plant shops. during the summer, I love to like walk to all the plant stores. I live in Chinatown, so there's like Plant and Curio that's really near me. There's a lot of plant stores in Westboro. There's also like Richie's, which is kind of like east, and they have a lot of plants over there. Honestly, like I just love going to all the different plant stores and seeing what it is that they have in stock. You'll definitely notice if you start doing that a lot of them carry the same thing. So it gets really exciting when you find something like this Begonia immaculata, which is really rare. And that's when like the excitement for plants really begins. And that's when it probably becomes an issue because then you start buying all these like really fun plants, that are uncommon and sometimes hard to find. And then for light, like I said, you really want to do your research. Some plants prefer indirect light. Some plants prefer to be indirect light. Some plants are okay living in low light. And once you have that information, you'll be able to look up your plant and see what type of lighting match it needs. Not all plants need the same light requirements. So like I said earlier, do your research, figure it out. And in talking about research, these two books I honestly find really, really helpful. These can be found at any like local bookstores. This one was actually a gift that I got, and I found it extremely helpful. It's called Houseplants, literally as simple as that. And it has pictures, and then it'll tell you about propagation, watering, light preference for every plant. And it'll also tell you if it's easy to take care of, moderately easy, or challenging, which is really fun to know ahead of time. So this was really helpful. Also this one, How to Raise a Plant and Make It Love You Back, was also really helpful for me. And also YouTube, I watch a lot of like plant YouTube channels. Two of my favorites, definitely Planterina. If you haven't seen her channel on YouTube, definitely go there. Harley G, I think, is another person that I love to watch. She has like, oh my god, so many plants, and she orders new plants every week and does like unboxings. It's like, oh my god, it's really exciting though, and I love to watch them. And on Instagram, someone that I really enjoy, like if you want like something at the intersection of like being queer and being a plant lover, Plant Queen with a Kween, really cool Instagram page to follow. Always out and about wearing heels, buying new plants. Anyways, he's also just a really cool person to follow. So if you have, again, any other questions, please type them below. I'll move on to the next thing, which is talking about propagation. So I definitely think that like one of the most exciting things about owning plants is that you can propagate them. My partner definitely does not seem to think the same, because then it just multiplies the amount of plants that you have. And then you become like me, where you have way too many and you need to start giving them out. But for propagation, you can honestly use like whatever type of thing that can hold water. And then you would just put your cuttings into it and then let it grow over a couple of months. Sometimes roots, you'll want to wait until roots are at least like a few centimeters long. And then after they are, you can just transplant them into a pot. And then most people ask me, how do I know like where to cut my plants for propagation? So again, propagation is something that you'll probably want to do a bit of research on, because every plant is a little different. But this one, for example, and most plants, and this is dead, I know. I'm sorry I'm using this as an example right now. But it's a great example because these are roots at the bottom here. And I'll be able to show you all, like for example, where you would cut a plant if you wanted to propagate it. So you'd want to cut the plant at the node. So plants that have nodes will be able to grow roots out of that node. And what a node usually looks like is in between where the leaves grow. So in between here and here. So these are two nodes, for example, and usually the leaves will grow out of that on the other side. So you can see here there's another node and then the leaf that's growing out. So you'll want to cut in between the nodes, and the roots will normally grow out of the nodes. So those are for plants that have nodes. So that's how you'll do it. So this is a great example. You see the roots that are growing out of the nodes. And once they're about this long, you would just, again, take that and then transplant it into a pot, and it'll grow a new plant. Really exciting. Now, some plants, like this one, actually do not have nodes. And This one actually propagates itself and will actually grow babies off of a stem. And this will usually only grow during growth season, which is like summer. And it'll actually kind of like grow a stem with its own little plant living on it. And you'll want to make sure that that plant grows like a little big enough. And then you'll just cut it at the stem and then transplant that into another pot. Now, I'm not an expert, so I'm not 100% sure how to like propagate like every single plant, but I know that something like, oh, this one's heavy. Something like this other ficus here. So most people know this for like a rubber plant. This one you can honestly just cut it right off the stem and then put it into water for a month or two and then put it into another pot. So that's another way that you can transplant. And then another thing that you can do for support when you're transplanting your plants is actually using rooting powder or rooting hormone. So this is something that I had bought. I think I bought this at Walmart a little while back, and it's supposed to help your plants root after you've cut them. I honestly used it once and then I stopped using it because it honestly didn't do much of a difference. And what I found is actually that this made my water kind of like moldy. And so then I had to change my water out with my propagations much more often. So the other thing, it's the same thing as when you're watering your plants. So if a propagation is growing into some water, you'll want to make sure that you're changing out that water at least once a week or as often as you can. Sometimes I've honestly forgotten it for a few weeks and it was fine, but you just want to make sure because the water does get stale and sometimes dirty, so you want to just change it out so the plant has fresh water to absorb. Now some plants do require to be trained. So some plants are vine plants. So for example, I have this beautiful monstera back there, if you all can see it. And that monstera is wild. Like it grows horizontally instead of vertically. Is that right? I think I'm right. So sometimes what you'll want to do is, because they take a lot of space when they're growing vertically, is you'll want to train them up. And so you can use moss poles like this one, for example. And most plants that grow that way will also have like roots that can latch onto this, which will train it to go up. For example, a monstera plant has aerial roots. And the aerial roots actually will train themselves to latch onto this so that the plant can keep growing up instead of vertically. So that's good, because if you have a plant like that monstera over there that is wanting to grow vertically but you just don't have that space, you can use things like this to help it grow up instead of vertically. And then it just makes it easier for you to manage your space, because plants will grow and they will grow big. And when they have grown big, you will probably have fallen in love with them so much that you will not want to get rid of them. So you will either want to help them grow up so that they grow vertically so that you can maintain them in the same space where they were always, or you'll want to cut them and propagate them so that they can make multiple smaller plants so that you can remanage again the amount of space that it takes. That being said, I think I've talked about almost everything that I wanted to talk to you all about. There actually is a few more things that I want to show you all before we leave, and those are the plants I have around. I'm sorry if this doesn't work too well. I'm trying to take my phone off. Ooh. There you go. Hi, everyone. I was just trying to take my phone off my stand there. So actually, another thing that I want to show you is humidity. So in Canada, the air tends to be really, really dry. So if you have plants in your home, plants normally love high humidity. So a good tool to have is like moisture meters like this around your home that will tell you how moist the air is in your environment. So like right now, my room is at 37%. That's like okay. If I'm not running my humidifier, normally it'll be at like I think like 10%, which is really, really bad. And normally when the humidity is really low in your apartment, what you'll see is actually the tip of your leaves will start to brown. A really good example of this is actually, if I can flip my camera around, I can show you, is this one. So you see this browning tip here. This is an example, like this one is usually in the living room. So that's an example of like not high enough humidity in the room. Now I use a Levoit humidifier. I Amazon. I bought it I think right after the holidays, so it was like on sale. So this is the one I use, but you can find a lot of them online. So check that out and find one that works for you and for the plants that you have. And then other than that, I guess a quick tour of the plants that I took out for you all. So this is my Ficus altissima. Like I said, love this one. Ficus ruby. And then over here, we have the ones that we talked about earlier. My Begonia immaculata. This is my spider plant that Joel gave me. This is my big queen, my Ficus not my Ficus altissima, my Ficus lyrata. Like, she was tiny when I first got her, and honestly, like, she's big now. I'm like so in love with her. And then over here, I have some other like common ones. So I have a bird of paradise. So that one was also really, really small when I got it. Now she's like slowly taking over. I have my massive monstera, and then some usual ones down there. And then some regrowths in here. And then I have a ton more all around the house. But I'm not going to take you on a tour of all of them because honestly, it would take way too long to go through all of them. And then that's it. Do you all have any questions for me or about plants before I log off? Maybe I'll wait a few seconds, see if anyone has any other questions. So again, I guess the one thing that you can really take away from this, as people are maybe writing one last question if they have one, is do your research. Make sure that you know what kind of light that you have. Make sure that you inform yourself on what kind of watering your plant likes. And once you have all that information, honestly, it'll really help you be more successful with your plants. I've had a lot of success, and it's only due to because I've honestly done the research to learn how to take care of them. And definitely remember to give them some love, wipe the leaves off every now and then. I'm just saying that because I'm literally looking at this one right now and I'm like, ooh, she needs to be dusted. And then that's it. So thank you all for joining me today. I hope you are all doing well during this quarantine phase of our lives. And if you have any other ideas of fun activities that we can do online to engage you or even just to entertain you for a few hours, please let us know. Email at info@maxottawa.ca. Again, my name is Matt Harding. I'm the Community Programs Manager. If you have any questions about plant care while you're in quarantine, please let me know. My email is matt@maxottawa.ca. That's it. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.